is going on, everybody? Welcome to the television special of Weekly Dose of Dano TV. And we're doing an autism special today of 24 hours in the real life of autism. All of our panelists and my co-hosts as well, J.R. Reed, have all come together today to spread their truths, to spread their message on what they want to talk about most, and that is living with autism. Today is an extremely special day. Everybody's coming together from around the globe. You in the audience coming together just to really learn and take a step outside of their own shoes and to put their steps into somebody else's shoes to really figure out what it's like to live with autism. And one of the things that I ask everybody watching now and in the replay is that please share, because even if somebody watches for 5 minutes, it will give them 5 more minutes of motivation, golden nuggets, and life experience that they're able to take with them in their own life. And once they do that, they'll improve their lives. And I really, it will fulfill my intention and the purpose of having this platform for everybody to come along and really experience what it's like to really have autism. So right now I'm going to bring on my co-host, J.R. Reed. J.R. Reed is the man. You've probably seen him 2 times on the Weekly Dose of Dano TV episodes. And I'm just really, really excited and thankful and grateful for everybody to spend this hour and a half of time with each other just to really dive deep into what we're going to be talking about today, which is 24 hours in the real life living with autism. So I'm going to bring on J.R. Reed. There he is. My man, J.R., how you doing today?
What up? Hey, first thing I want to say is I am honored to be the only repeat guest on Weekly Dose of Dano, but I don't want you to forget what you promised me last week, and that is a shirt or a hoodie or something, so don't forget that.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I already have that in the works. Don't you?
Okay.
We're all good.
Now, the other thing I want to know and find out when we get our panelists up here is I want to get their opinion on what they thought of Dan dancing in the tux, because to me, that's just awesome.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to take life so seriously. And that's one of the things that I really live by the most is be who you are. Just because you have a suit on doesn't mean you have to act in a certain way. Be who you are. And JR, you know that just because you got the top hat and the purple beard, you really show what it means to live in your
autism tattoos on both forearms. I'm proudly autistic, proudly neurodivergent, and I love just spreading the word and showing people.
I love that.
I gotta say, so in my life as an autism self-advocate, writer, speaker, podcaster, all that, I've got probably 7, maybe 8 people that I call my go-to people. I mean, these are people that I love, that I trust, that I know that I can go to and bounce ideas off of, get advice from, talk to them about my problems, get ideas for stories or something to speak about. And we have 4 of those, 7 or 8 right here. Mm-hmm. These are my go-tos. So personally, I think we just need to bring them out and get going.
Well, JR, before we do that, we got to build the suspense for the audience watching right now. Would you just be able to tell a little bit of everybody's background and how you met them for each?
Sure. Well, let's just go in order. About 3.5 years ago, I was invited to be on a podcast, the Eli Winfrey Show, and Tony Boucher is the co-host, and that's how I met Tony. I believe I've been on the podcast, I'd have to look back at my records, I think 3 times, for sure 2. And Tony and I met, we've stayed in contact. She's written a great book. She is on the spectrum and also a therapist that deals with people on the spectrum. Next, I met Lyric. They are known as the Neurodivergent Rebel. And let me tell you, the last part of that definitely fits. Lyric is non-binary and goes by they, them pronouns. So I will say if I do slip up, I do apologize. It's not on purpose. But they are just an awesome advocate. They speak their mind and say what they really think. And I think that is awesome. And starting late May, early June, depending on when we get the next two podcasts recorded, Lyric and myself are starting a podcast that will be hosted on differentbrains.org, examining neurodiversity. We did already record our first podcast. We're going to get three in the can before we go live. Not live, but before the podcast goes on air. Mm-hmm. Next up is Christopher D. Casson. Just an amazing guy. First off, love the hair. I mean, you can't not love Christopher's hair. He's a visual artist. He's on the spectrum. He's a podcaster. He doesn't have a lot to say, you know, in terms of, he doesn't speak a lot like I do, but man, what comes out of his mouth is so powerful. And his visual artistry is so powerful. I mean, it makes me sit back and say, wow. I mean, Dr. Stephen Mark Shore, who is the only autistic professor of autism in the United States, famously said, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And what that means is there are so many traits that an autistic person can have. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of overlapping ones. And I'm sure that between the five of us on this panel, there are several that overlap. Yeah. But we each have our own unique traits that make us the autistic individuals that we are. Yeah. And man, I look at Christopher and I'm just blown away. And that leaves us finally with the Thunder from Down Under, known as My Big Sis, only by a couple years. She's known as Auntie Shaza. Mm-hmm. Real name is Sharon Carmelo. She's coming to us where we're all at 4 and 5 o'clock on Monday afternoon, depending on where we are. She's coming to us Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. from near Brisbane, Australia. Oh, yeah. And she has got just a great way of dealing with all the coexisting conditions that come along with autism. Because generally, a person is not just autistic. There are coexisting conditions such as ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, things that come along with that. Yeah. I believe a lot of those.
JR, the suspense is killing me right now, man. I just want to bring everybody on, and I really want everybody to share their story. That was amazing. And I just want to make one more quick point. The reason that we're having this in May is because autism is a year-round thing that happens around the clock, around the year. So this is just something that we needed to share. So without further ado, we're going to bring everybody on the show right now. So everybody better get ready. Let's go.
Hey, Dano, and the other thing, this is not scratching the surface. We're grabbing a shovel and we're digging deep.
Let's do it. We're digging deep right now. So let's bring everybody on the show and let's get after it. Hello, wonderful people. How's everybody doing today?
Hey. All right. Okay. Let's go around and start with introductions. I'm not quite sure how I would say this, and Lyric, you can help me. My home them?
Home them. I'll take it. Yeah.
My home them.
Works for me.
The former Krista, now known as Lyric Holmans, the neurodivergent rebel.
Hi, thank you so much for that fabulous introduction. Rebel is right. I'm going to come in here and rebel rouse from the start. Late discovered neurodivergent adult. Didn't know I was autistic until I was almost 30. Didn't find out I was ADHD until I was 33. So that's, 4.5 years later, actually earlier this year. And I just want to say thank you, Dano, for the opportunity to come on here and share with humans today. I don't live with autism. I'm autistic. And what I mean by that is autism is not something that could be removed from me. It impacts every and my passions to my gender identity, who I love, my friends, and just even my sense of wild, out there, rebellious style and my rebellious mouth that people seem to love me for or hate me for, depending on what side of the fence you're on. So that's me, and you know, I go out there and scream into the void of the internet to try and you know, tell people that existing as an autistic person is not a tragedy, and it's okay. And you know, we aren't as bad as the boogeyman as media has made us out to be. Ooh, autism. You know, we're epidemic. Ooh, we could be watching you right now.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you so much for the introduction. And I just want to say shout out to E360 just to be able to give us this platform to speak and to everybody to share their story today. Next, I want to go to, on my screen, we're going to go Auntie Shaza, then Tony, then Christopher. So Auntie Shaza, would you be able to introduce who you are and what you do and why you're here today?
Sure, thank you. I should say g'day.
Today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me, JR. So I'm Auntie Shaza, and to my son's friends, I'm S-Dog. So, and that's my that's my skater name. I'm a skater, and I've had a go at surfing. I'm not so good, but I will try anything to step outside the comfort zone, which is where I believe the learning and growth occur. And by facing fears, we can help reduce anxiety. Look at Rebel nodding, yes. And Christopher doing his public speaking, which I imagine was facing a huge fear. So I noticed in your introduction for the TV channel, it said that 98% of people fear public speaking. Imagine if you have autism as well. So I'm a teacher. So I teach kids from 4 to 18. And I've noticed over my 30-year teaching career a huge increase in kids on the spectrum. And I help other teachers to understand them better, to encourage neurodivergent thinking, to encourage creativity, to embrace it and welcome it. And if I hear a teacher in the staff room saying, oh, that kid didn't do his maths right or whatever, I think of you, JR, and your story that no doubt you will tell later about maths lessons and getting the answer right. And I say to that teacher, wow, isn't that amazing that he thought of a different method? Wow, isn't that great? Did you get him to show it to the other kids? You know, a bit of passive aggressive. So yeah, I don't know that I am on the spectrum. JR thinks I am. I'm definitely a neurodivergent thinker. I'm a mum, an adventurer. I have no trouble with public speaking. But I totally understand the kids who do, and I help them as much as I can.
Well, guys, thank you for being here and for sharing your story. Tony, you're up next.
Yes, it's great to be here with all you lovely people. Thank you. So yeah, I am also, as Lyric, a late diagnosed person who I received my diagnosis in my 40s after my children had all kind of gone on the radar and been diagnosed. And interestingly enough, autism has been one of my special interests or obsessions since I was a senior in high school. And so I have been, I've been working with folks on the spectrum, helping them reach their goals for over 30 years now. And I absolutely love it. One of the things that I do that I think is really important is to create a community around the people I work with of autism and really help people to focus on what is an autistic lifestyle and really making sure that things work for you. And I absolutely love doing it. So, yeah.
And you've got a book.
Yes, I have a book, and I'm working on my memoir right now. And the other thing, the book is Autism Translated. It's a really good kind of primer for people who want to understand more And a lot of autistic people end up giving it to family members to help them understand a little bit better. I've also paired up with Hector Salazar to do the Autism Broadcast Network recently. And we actually have a lifestyle show that we're going to be featuring pretty soon as well.
Amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. And Tony, I just want to say, just like everybody else, I'm going to keep saying it. Thank you so much for coming on today, sharing your story, and really making a difference in the world of autism and just even the world by itself.
Thanks for having me.
Last but not least, we have Christopher Casson. Christopher, would you be able to tell everybody what you do and a little bit about yourself?
I kind of feel like a newbie in comparison to all of you, but you got to start somewhere. So I'm Christopher Casson. I'm an artist, photographer, podcaster, happens to be on the autistic spectrum. I believe I'm the only one that actually got diagnosed early with Asperger's at around 5 or 6, but even then that wasn't easy. To cut the long story short, bullying, dealing with frequent deaths in the close so-called family and friends, on top of just trying to fit into society that at times didn't want me. And eventually, as I learned more about my autism, I thought I was limited by this. Why even bother anymore? And especially when listening to the news saying, why would I want to join the world with all of this crap happening? You know how it is. But eventually I just got to a point where I just decided, instead of waiting for someone to save you, just save yourself, and just started to push myself out of the comfort zone. And it's been snowballing since then, since I've now, as I mentioned, just jumped into entrepreneurship when I just struggled with going through job interviews and decided, screw this, I'm creating my own job. And moved on from there to jumping into taking a risk with the competition with my own little concept called Autism to Autism, where we focus on what our abilities are instead of disabilities, and just more of a focus on the struggles that autistic adults face in the world. And what's my dog doing back there? What the heck? But anyway, it's kind of annoying, but yeah, and out of hundreds, I end up in 4th place in a first ever worldwide competition, and now just dipping into art. As you can see here, started helping a nonprofit with art healing sessions just recently, and just can't wait to see how things go from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, again, for the introductions. We're going to be going through the different topics that everybody submitted. I just want to let everybody watching know, everybody on this panel has a really strong point that they really wanted to cover today. So we're going to go through each person. Me and JR are going to start off and introduce the different topics for today. But now it's time to get into the meat and the potatoes of the segment and of the program. So now this is where things are going to start to get real, start to get serious, and we're going to hear firsthand perspectives from everybody about what their different topics that they want to talk about are. And I want to share with everybody else that if you have any comments or questions, always leave them in the on the Facebook Weekly Dose of Dano page, just so everybody's able to see it. And now is the time and the moment that we have all been waiting for. So for today, we are going to start with the topic of bullying, and Tony's going to take the lead on that one for today. And also, I just want to let all the panelists know that this is going to be an open discussion. So if there's anything that you wanted to add on to what Tony is saying, we'll see the cues, and you can just jump in, and when Tony's finished, and just keep it rolling, just to talk about your experience with everything. So Tony, I want you to take the lead on this. And first of all, why did you choose the topic of bullying? And I want you to really dive deep into it and your experience with that.
Yeah, Dan, that's a really excellent question. And the reason I really felt this is something that we should have a really serious conversation about is because those folks who have experienced bullying, it really ends up paving the way for some unhealthy behaviors and some unhealthy choices down the line if it's not addressed properly. So when you're bullied, your boundaries have been crossed, whether that's a physical boundary, because, for example, in my case, somebody took me and hung me over a 2-story balcony, or if somebody just calls you names or made threats, or posted embarrassing comments, spread rumors, sending mean texts, anything that involves a balance of power and cruel treatment of another person is a violation of your boundaries. And what that means is, as we experience these types of behaviors, then we lose a sense of who we are, our space, and that leads to really unhealthy patterns in life, including the possibility of exploitation, whether that would be financial exploitation, sexual exploitation, somebody, work exploitation, having you do their work while they sit around and, text. Those things are easier to happen in a person's life if we've had bullying as a result of those boundaries being violated. And I work with a lot of autistic adults who get really stuck in an experience or something that happened in their childhood that was so traumatizing that it's very difficult for them to get out of it. And so it impacts them throughout life extremely profoundly. And so that is a long-winded answer to your question, but that's why I wanted to address it.
Yeah, and that's amazing because I think everybody in this room and everybody watching they've experienced some form of bullying, whether they were the bully or the person being bullied. So this is a worldwide topic, and I'm just so glad that we're able to incorporate this into the special for today. So,
well, Dan, I'd like to add to what she said in that, from 5th grade. So I went from K through 4 in public school. 5th grade, my parents decided it was best for me to go to Christian school. So from 5 to 12 is when I started hearing from the teachers, weird, stupid, lazy, can't live up to your potential, aren't living up to your potential, won't live up to your potential. And I firmly believe, and that was just the teachers. And then the kids got more colorful, and I firmly believe that a lot of that, I'm not going to say caused, but definitely contributed to social anxiety and depression.
Yeah, that's so true, JR. And I think this is one of the really important things to recognize when we're dealing with this topic is it's not just peers that engage in this type of behavior. I had a music teacher who threw me under the bus in front of everybody because I had sensory issues in band. And it was the same thing where, somebody in a position of power is a person who does bullying. And so it can be teachers, it can be, and it translates into the workplace. I know Lyric's going to talk with us a little bit more about, work, but, your colleagues can do it, your boss can do it. So it's not just like you think of little kids on the playground. Yes, that happens, but it also translates into, people in positions of power, older people, doing it as well. So it's a really great point, JR.
Okay, Lyric had their hand up. They want to speak.
Yeah, thanks, man. So what I was going to say is too, absolutely, it can be teachers and people in power because I, as a young person in elementary school, went to the teacher because I was being bullied and picked on by my peers, and the teacher told me that if I would stop being weird and acted normal, whatever that means, kids would leave me alone. Which I was an undiagnosed autistic person, had no idea what I was doing that was so weird. It was just me existing. So yeah, it starts early.
Yeah.
And Tony, I want to ask you one question. Do you think that kids with autism are bullied more because of what they're living with?
Yeah, so I tend to steer away from the statistics because I'm not confident that they're very accurate. But the statistics that we do have indicate that individuals on the spectrum are at greater risk of being bullied than a neurotypical, peer. And so we do know that we're at higher risk. There are some other things that are happening though as well. And one of those is that not only are we at greater risk of being bullied, but our response to it can be unusual because of the way we're wired. We may not be able to pick up on the social cues and know, is this person just friendly teasing me or are they being malicious? We're not reading those things. And so a lot of times we're very vulnerable to falling into situations where that bullying continues, and we just don't know how to interpret it when it happens. I had no clue if when I was in school, if somebody liked me or hated me. I just didn't know until somebody actually came out and said, "Yeah, I like you, Tony." And to this day, I'm not really sure if people, I'm 50, and I'm still not really sure if people like me or don't. And it's really difficult if you're not able to read those cues.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, before we go to Christopher, I want to define two terms that we're going to be using for people that don't know a lot about autism or neurodiversity. Neurotypical, as Tony just mentioned, is the general population that has a neurologically typically formed brain. Neurodivergent, and in quotes, Lyric, to be neurodivergent is to, and she's going to help me out on this in a second because I always forget a couple. To be neurodivergent is to have a brain that diverges from the neurologically typical and generally includes autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia,
OCD, Tourette's, hyperlexia, dyscalculia. We'll go in a circle, but differences in the ways we process information. It tends to be processing differences in how we think and experience the world that are invisible.
And that's just for people who don't know a whole lot. So when we use the word neurodivergent or neurotypical, at least you have an understanding now what we're talking about.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. Yeah, 100%.
You want to talk about bullying?
Hey, Christopher, did you want to add to anything about the bullying points?
Well, I think part of the problem is just kind of universal, and that's, I guess, in a way you could say, mass conformity with how things should be and how things should be thought of. And I guess part of the reason for that bullying is, especially when it comes to adults, is just that feeling of frustration of not being them, and they unfortunately decide to take it out on who they perceive as the weakest, and that tends to be the disabled. And they think it'll make them better when it's really just showing how weak-minded they are, which is why they end up conforming in the first place, because how weak-minded they are instead of strengthening that mindset.
Christopher, I'm so glad you bring this up, because that leads us to, I think, what we need to talk about next, which is, why does it happen, and what can we do about that? Because I feel strongly we need to have some actionable, things to talk about here to make it better. And we cannot bully someone if we see them in ourselves, or if we see their humanness and that we see them as somebody who has something similar to us. So the only way that any kind of cruel treatment can take place is if we dehumanize a person. And so it's that us versus them. And so I think that's a really important point. Something else that I think is really important to look at is, then how do we address this? And I think one of the most important things is that if we're going to kind of take the fizz or the power out from underneath the bully, the way that we do that is actually counterintuitive, and that's to give that person more power by giving them permission to actually look after and be a leader. And I've done this throughout, my career, where we've got people who are looking for a sense of power by picking on someone, and that's not the way to do it. So we need to redirect that and let them know they have power to create a culture of love and understanding, which means whenever I see those kids who have a tendency to be bullies, I pull them aside and I say, look, I need your help. There are some people in here who are not going to feel as comfortable participating as you are. It's your job to pay attention to that and make sure they're participating, make sure they're included, make sure they feel good. And I've never seen that fail. When you show love and kindness to the bully and give them permission to act in a way that really pays honor and homage to their higher self, that really addresses it.
Yeah. Auntie Shaza, I know you work with teens. Obviously, you're the teen whisperer. What are your thoughts on the topic of bullying, and especially among teens?
Yeah, I've been nodding a lot with everything that Tony is saying there. Um, Tony Robbins says, there are 6 core needs, and one of them is significance. So what do you think the bully is looking for? Significance. So as teachers or parents, how can we give the bully some significance that doesn't involve putting another person down? So that's one strategy. We have a campaign here called Bullying No Way. That's a very good campaign. It has a lot of strategies for parents and kids. And I used to have a little strategy from a school, just a little tiny government school here, and it was called Do the Five. So we teach the kids ignore, walk away. So that might mean online, you just remove yourself from that conversation. So ignore, walk away, speak kindly, say, hey, I don't want to hear that. I don't like that. The fourth one is to speak more firmly. Hey, I've asked you to stop. Please stop. And the last one is to report to a parent or a teacher or an authority. And I see Tony nodding. Yeah, it's a really simple strategy. And I'd like to see it worldwide. We just call it do the five. Do the five. Ignore, walk away, speak kindly, speak firmly, report. So we give skills to the victim and to make them more powerful, to be less of a victim, and we give significance to the bully in a more positive or resourceful way.
I love that. I love that so much. And thank you for sharing everything. One final thing, just to wrap up this topic, because I know JR is going to take the lead on the next topic. When a person is spewing this negativity, whether it's through physical actions, verbal communications, please always remember that everything that anybody ever says or does is ultimately a reflection of them and what they're going through inside of their own life. If somebody's having a bad day, they're going to try any way, even if it's unhealthy practices, in order to release that negativity from themselves, and they want to throw it on everybody else. And this is another thing. The bully is also crying out for their own issues, and it's kind of the same thing in that same realm. So I want to thank everybody for sharing their stories and being vulnerable enough to really show the world that you're not going through this by yourselves, that if you stick together, that you really can get through anything. So JR, I want you to take the next topic, my man.
It's real simple. We're going to talk about autism and neurodiversity in the workplace, and there's nobody that I know better than the founder of Neurodivergent Consulting, a person who does this on a daily basis, except for when they are going to take a day off in the next few days. Larry Coleman's.
Hi, thank you so much. This has become my obsession because not being able to get what I needed in the workplace really made me sick, maybe almost killed me, almost drove me out of the workplace, got me fired up enough to really want to change things. We have, with neurodivergent people, with autistic people especially, very high rates of unemployment. And depending on which statistics you look at, it tends to be 75 to 80 and 90% that are under or unemployed, meaning we're taking jobs that we could do more, but because perception of us is often not great, we don't necessarily interview well because of things people look for in interviews. Because a job interview really doesn't tell you that you've got the best candidate. It just tells you that you've got someone that does really good at interviews. And unfortunately, for a lot of autistic people, that isn't us. And so we have all of these obstacles to get into reasonable employment. And then if we get into workplaces where, unfortunately, as it is right now in the current climate, people don't have a good understanding of autistic people and what our needs are. And what I found when I was newly discovered, diagnosed at 29, in the workplace, because I had been pushing myself very hard to live up to neurotypical standards and expectations, because I thought I had my dream job and I wanted this job so bad I was going to be able to do what everyone else did, how everyone else did it. And I was a square peg in a round hole. They say that you square peg in the round hole, you damage the peg. I was destroying myself. I was getting physically sick. I was wasting away. I was physically unhealthy. I was mentally unhealthy because my sense of self-worth plummeted because I felt like a completely incapable, unworthy person because I was holding myself to neurotypical standards, which is very unfair considering I have different standards, and that's okay, you know. But I didn't know that when I didn't know I was autistic. And the thing is, there are a lot of autistic and neurodivergent people, especially in my age group. I'm going to throw it out there. I'm 34 years old. So my age group and older that are likely undiscovered as well, because the diagnostic criteria was more narrow and much more limited when I was growing up, and then for people that are older than me. And then the other thing around that too is, you know, we say, sometimes people are concerned like, oh, we've got these growing autism numbers. No, we don't have growing autism numbers. We have more understanding of what autism is, and the diagnostic criteria is more inclusive now. So we have a better understanding of autism. And I think even now our numbers that we have officially on paper are probably lower because of all of those undiagnosed folks that they don't take into consideration. But the thing is about, you know, because I come from operations and recruiting and HR and all of that, bad hires and turnover is a very astronomical business expense for employers. And neurodivergent people and autistic people are already in your workforce, whether you know it or not. It's like 1 in 8 people are considered neurodivergent. So those other conditions that JR and I spoke about earlier in the brain where we have differences in processing. And I'm multiply neurodivergent, so autistic, ADHD, and some other stuff going on with my mental health as well. And so many of us have these compounded issues. And when we hold ourselves to neurotypical standards in the workplace, we can really... a lot of the things, the fact is, you know, when I asked for accommodations, my employer said, no, we can't give it to you because that's something everybody would like, which was actually kind of the point that if I'm asking for something that is good for everyone in your organization that everybody would probably like, it sounds like you've got a really crummy system that maybe you should fix. Autistic people, we tend to be the canary in the coal mine. You want what I'm asking for, but I need this or I'm going to get sick. And so, you know, little things like working remotely that no one was willing to let anybody do until a year ago. And now suddenly everyone's used to it and it's okay. I've been telling people for years, it's okay. You can do it. Trust me, your people will work better and more efficiently. Now we know it's true. You know, letting people have more flexible schedules. This is great for autistic people, anyone with a disability, but also people who are parents and they're working around kids who've been home during COVID, because if you have elementary school kids, you can't just turn them loose on Zoom. You're now a teacher and a parent and working full time. So like these things benefit everybody, and having a sensory friendly space and having dedicated quiet work areas. You know, if you have people that have to come to a physical office where people can go if they situationally need to work somewhere quiet, because if you're on a deadline or you're learning something new or you've got something stressful just land on your plate, you're probably not going to work in that noisy open office because that's going to be too much for you. Even if it's not too much for you every day and that's the environment you thrive in most of the time, sometimes even the neurotypical people will benefit from these things. So I've been pushing businesses to change the way they think about how they do things and be willing to be innovative and make change, because innovation and change and diversity is really where a lot of power in business comes from. The businesses that are innovative and are willing to make change and have more diverse people on their teams are the ones that are really doing things in the world. And diversity, we have been talking about diversity for a lot of years, but neurodiversity, because it is invisible diversity, is often like the forgotten stepchild of diversity. And I've been telling people that, hey, you know, if your diversity inclusion program doesn't take neurodiversity into account, it is already obsolete because we're already in your workforce. This isn't something that's coming tomorrow. We're here. And I've gone to independent consulting and self-employment on my own. Well, my last employer was fantastic and I loved them, but you know, we parted ways during Corona and we're still friends and we still work together. But I've decided that because so many systems aren't set up to take needs of people like me into account, I don't really even want to try to go work in-house somewhere else. So I'm setting up my own systems, which that's what the lucky ones of us do, because the systems, unless workplaces change, are chasing us away if we are able to get in the door in the first place.
Yeah, I love that.
The summary.
Dan, why don't we go around to Shazza, Tony, and then Christopher, because Christopher wanted to talk more about autism in the workplace, and then we can just kind of segue right into his and let him go.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. So Shazza, take it away.
Okay. Oh, did you want Christopher to speak first about the
No.
workplace?
I mean, do you have any opinions on autism in the workplace and or maybe even tell us what they're doing about autism in the workplace in Australia.
Yeah. Okay. There are a number of programs to help employ people who are on the spectrum. We tend to use that language here, on the spectrum. And just on that, there was a question in the comments. If I can just raise that, JR, there was a question about, do we say I have autism, or do we say I am on the autism spectrum? What is the language that you use in the States?
What is called people first language says you're supposed to say have autism unless or until they tell you that they prefer otherwise.
Yeah.
I personally prefer I'm autistic because in my brain, I have autism. I automatically think I have cancer. I have diabetes, something that defines my life and who I am. I'm autistic. To me, and this again, just personal opinion, is just a part of my life.
Yes.
But I will start with people first language when I'm meeting people and addressing people that I don't know, and address them as they have autism until they tell me otherwise.
And see, I do the opposite. See, it really does depend on who you're asked, but generally, and the people that I know, and like in polls and things that happen, of course, you do refer to the person. So whatever the person tells you is going to be their, respect their wishes. You don't want to dictate how somebody else identifies. But if you ask and see polls on the internet and things, generally the preference of people, but whatever the feelings are, they are going to have very strong feelings personally. And so you have to respect people's personal feelings. But for me, autistic, definitely, for the similar reasons that JR said, would be my preference. But, you do have to defer to the individual. But I think autistic, I think is probably a safer bet. If I say with autism or something, I'm going to get a bunch of comments on my Facebook page saying, I'm not a person with autism.
Yeah.
Pretty quick, and people get fired up on it.
And I guess I have to define what I said. When I'm meeting somebody in person or doing a one-on-one with them, when I'm writing on Facebook or I'm on Twitter or something like that, or I'm just writing a piece, I will use autistic.
Okay.
But if it's a one-on-one type situation or a small group type situation, I'll use have autism.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Shazit, any final words on working with the autism?
Yeah, we do have some positive programs, but thank you for just clarifying the definition. And just as we have programs here for, employing more women or more people of color or whatever, we do have programs to support people. And some workplaces, as just the same as over there, are very inclusive and embrace the creativity of the people with autism, and some clearly don't. So but I'm not really familiar enough with that topic, so I'll pass that one over.
Yeah. Krista, have you found many workplaces that are really, really autism friendly?
Well, the one I'm currently working at overnight, they do have a section talking about the ADA and being able to call and seek any accommodations, but then it seems to be more of the big corporations that are being more supportive, such as, Microsoft hiring more. But in terms of small and mid-sized businesses, they are kind of slacking a bit. And since small to mid-sized businesses are the backbone of America, that's really where we need to improve a lot to really make changes, in my opinion.
You know what? I said Kristen, I meant Lyric, but oh well. Tony, what's your opinion on this?
So, I agree 100% with everything that Lyric said. Just want to punctuate that. I do know, I really advocate for my clients in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, to do the self-employment route. That really works for me. I remember working in the traditional work world and thinking, I don't know how people do this without burning out. I just can't sustain. I love working for myself and for my clients. I don't have to work full time. I make a much more viable living doing this, scheduling myself in a very flexible way. It just works really well for a lot of autistic people. And you can start small. I coach a lot of my clients to go ahead and build a small business. I have women, if you go to my website, you'll see they have an online jewelry store where several of those women are actually now making jewelry and selling it, and that money goes to them, and so they can build on that and grow into their business. So it's just such a great model. It's interesting that Christopher mentioned that he thinks that the larger corporations tend to address autism better. My experience has been when we're actually looking at employing people in a workable situation, when they're working for someone else, I found that the smaller mom and pop stores are more viable opportunities than the bigger corporations. And I see Lyric is nodding her head there. It's easier to have people kind of take somebody under their wing, do the training that it takes long term, and just create more of like a family environment. So I think they're not necessarily checking all the boxes according to like what the federal regulations are necessarily, but you've got some really passionate and caring people who are willing to find a person's talent and really put them in the right position. And when you do that, you can have such success. Autistic people are less likely to cheat the system. They're less likely to call in sick. They're less likely to drop out of work and move on to another job. So it's, you know, it's a win-win if you find the right fit. And that's all I'll say. I'll turn it over to Christopher now.
Okay,
Yeah.
Christopher, and please go ahead and expand and talk all you want about autism in the workplace. And when you're done, if you got a couple minutes, why don't you talk a little bit about visual art and communicating through visual art?
Wait, before you do that, I would just say we have to get our word from our sponsors in as well. So, Christopher, I want you to continue to talk about the workplace and autism. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we can go back to the visual arts portion and the aspect of everything as well.
Christopher, you got your mic off.
Oh, I thought he was going to go straight to the.
No, he's going after you speak.
Yeah, after you speak.
Oh, okay. So, you know, I was just going off of, you know, I part of different Facebook groups of different autistic individuals. And, you know, that's something I've tend to hear with like more of the smaller stores that sometimes they end up getting bullied by employers on top of that. So that's kind of why I went off of that with that mind process. And, you know, I remember you had the question of, would I prefer to be called I'm autistic or I have autism and whatnot? Well, for me, I prefer to say that I'm Christopher because I want the person to focus on me rather than my label.
Good for you.
That's such an awesome thing. It's like we said before, man. Christopher doesn't. I don't understand why my camera is lagging, but everybody can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. Perfect. I just love the fact that, Christopher, you really don't talk too much, but the stuff that you say is super powerful, man. So I love it when you speak because it's like, it's amazing. It really is truly amazing. Just the fact, the stuff that you do say is stuff that's really outside of the box and not some of the things that you hear on the everyday basis. So while my camera's still
Dan, real quick, before we go to commercial, I just want to point out that the 4 people on this panel that are diagnosed as being on the spectrum, all self-employed.
That's what I'm talking about. And that's amazing. So thank you guys. And we're going to just take a quick commercial break and a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with everything, guys. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everybody. This is just being a little laggy. I just want to say welcome back, everybody. That was just a quick word from our sponsors. Thank you so much for the sponsors for helping out with the Weekly Dose of Dano television special and just the show in general. And here we are all on the E360 TV network. And we're just super, super excited to be here right now. So I didn't forget, Christopher, you're going to lead us off today about the topic of visual arts and, you know, that relation to autism. And then we're going to take it, let's just do any random order. We're going to go.
No. We still have to talk to Shaz about her emoji model.
No. I meant like when it comes to.
Yes.
Come on, my guy. I know how to do this. We're all good. So we're going to do Christopher, Lyric, Auntie Shaza, and then we're going to end it off with Tony. And then JR, you're going to bring in our next topic. So
right.
Christopher, take us off for today.
I'm not sure what to say.
Well, Christopher, how about how you use visual arts to communicate, you know, rather than just using words?
Well, for me, I've just always drawn as long as I remembered. I mean, and for me, it was just, I guess, in a way, kind of my way of stimming, since I remember always drawing in my notebook when I should be taking notes in class because of, you know, how everything is. And, you know, it also created, I guess you could say, a bit of a connection with my late mother, since she also drew a lot. So for me, it was just, you know, for me to draw out my thoughts instead of, you know, trying to write it in the words, because, you know, we put so much praise on speaking when it's actually very, very limiting, since there's just some things that words just cannot convey in comparison to just an image, which it can say all sorts of things. So
speaking of stimming, Lyric, rocking back and forth.
Busted.
Lyric, why don't you give just a quick 30-second definition of what stimming is for people who don't know?
Yeah. To summarize, stimming would be well, I'm stimming right now. I'm an autistic person. I'm always in motion, right? It's an energy regulation thing. So whether you're regulating your emotions or just your general energy, so like if I get anxious, I move around a lot more, and if I move, I feel a lot less anxious because I'm just displacing some of that through my bodily movement, for example. And so I didn't even realize I was doing it until JR called me out. Thanks, man. But no, I'm joking. But a lot of us, we do it without realizing. But then also some of us have learned like, oh, this stimming is intentionally. So we sensory seek it. So like Christopher was saying with drawing, same, always getting in trouble for doodling. I was listening. The teacher just didn't know I was listening. And also like music, anything with music, I seek out music, dance, movement, just really being in motion, sensory seeking, because I've learned that it does make me feel good to do that. And someone said autistic lifestyle earlier, and my ears perked up, and I'm like, yes, all about that autistic lifestyle, because really engaging in like not holding myself back when my body does start stimming subconsciously, and I've got stimmy things everywhere, and embracing that part of myself, and even like making extra effort to intentionally go out and move and do things, especially because I sit in front of my computer all day, and that is the opposite of what I need. Us in offices, like we need to move if we have to sit in offices, or kids in school all day. It's hard on us. Autistic, ADHD, other people stim, but neurodivergent humans tend to stim more, I think, than that typical, air quotes again.
Yeah, and as we've been doing this show, by the way, I've been sitting here with my fidget spinner on my right hand most of the show.
Yeah.
So, Dan, who are we going to next?
So right now we're going to go to Auntie Shaza.
Okay. Well, once again, I found a couple of questions. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to share, if you're going to talk about the parenting, I was going to do that as the final kind of wrap up. I saw the little private message that you sent. So we're going to cover that as well. So if it's like has anything to do not with the parenting, then I would say go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so, well, the questions are about parents of kids with autism, and so someone will find the questions and put them up, I guess. Joan had a couple of questions about that, and autism, advocating for a child who's on the spectrum and the parent is in denial. So, yeah, so we can put that into the parenting topic. So I
how are
think
visual arts? How do visual arts for people that are on the spectrum? Are they encouraged in Australia? Are they promoted? What's it like down there?
Absolutely. What I didn't tell you, I have never told you, is I'm actually an art teacher. So there's a great coincidence. Yeah. So thank you. I love teaching art,
My big sister
especially.
holding out on me.
Yeah. I just didn't mention it. So so I teach art from 4-year-olds right through to 18-year-olds, and it is so good for the kids on the spectrum. We say on the spectrum here. So yeah, we unfortunately they still use the terminology. Well, unfortunately, in my opinion, we use ASD a lot, which is autism spectrum disorder. I can see Lyric grimacing. Yeah, disorder. Bring it on. Yeah, outside the box. So, yeah, we love the visual art here, and there are what we call adjustments made for different people with different learning styles, different divergence of thinking. So, absolutely, and art therapy is very big here too. So, I'm really pleased to say that.
Awesome. Now we're gonna
Art-
move on with Tony.
Yeah, art activates a different center of the brain. And, we talk a lot about how the autistic brain is wired differently. And one of the ways that many autistic people are wired differently is that many of us think in pictures or visuals. And the spoken language is like a second language to us. And so I love, the work Christopher does is just stunningly beautiful. And there's a lot of emotion that can be, pulled out. And so many things, like you said, Christopher, can be said so much more powerfully through a stunning image than if you're trying to grasp for these words. My first language actually is as Lyric is doing, stimming. Movement is a way to communicate. That is a way to interact with your world. And art is a way, whether it's music or like the paintings that Christopher does, that is a way to communicate and interact with the world. And I think we folks on the spectrum really get that. And so I would love to see us encouraging more of those arts than really trying to pressure kids into talking more, because talking is an abstract method of communication, and it's beautiful. I love words. I love language, but it is not my native tongue. It is secondary. And so when we tap into those deeper forms of communication like art or music, then we're really going to have some powerful stuff show up that way, and communication that you can't put into words because there's no translation for it.
Right. We'll tell you what, we've got about a half hour. We still need to talk about Shazza's emoji model, but we still want to also talk about masking and parenting. So let's keep this moving and get on to Shazza. Explain in a reasonable amount of time, what is your emoji model?
Okay, a reasonable amount of time. Got it. Under 5 for sure. So emoji is a little model that I came up with that I'm going to do a PDF soon. You can see it behind me. At this stage, it's just I've just hand drawn it because I am expressive that way. People have said to me, "Oh, you need to do it on Canva." Well, I will in time, but for now, it's come from the heart through the pens to the page, and that's how I roll. So all it is just it's just a summary of 5 years of personal development. So 5 years ago, I left a very conservative marriage, and I never did fit in the box, and I never will. So now I am outside my box and free to be me. So it was a very happy marriage and a beautiful family, 2 millennials. But yeah, I've spent the last 5 years on personal development and beating anxiety and depression, or learning to deal with anxiety and depression, not necessarily beating it. So so emoji is just strategies. E is for exercise, energy. How do we get our energy? The right food. staying off substances, getting enough sleep, etc. All the things that create good energy. And what we need to do with kids, I will continue to use on the spectrum, if that's okay.
That's fine.
What we need to do is educate them that if they're gaming all day and all night, then maybe the levels of anxiety are going to increase. How can we get the levels of anxiety down? Because maybe they have enough anxiety just having autism or Asperger's or whatever. So how can anybody get levels of anxiety down and come out of depression that's caused by a lot of anxiety? So energy, exercise, and now I have a prop. This is emotions. This is emotions. It's a tennis ball, and we push it down, and we push it down, and we push it down. And what happens to it? It keeps bouncing up. It's got to come out. And what happens is when those, look at Christopher nodding, oh yeah. What happens is when it does come out, sometimes it explodes. And it explodes at your teacher or your little brother or your dad or your mom, the dog. And here's one we made earlier, and it did explode. So that one actually cracked because I was pushing it down in the water so much. The whole ball just cracked and exploded. So we talk to kids about how to express their emotions. It could be through visual art. It could be through seeing a counselor. It could be through finding people who think like I do. It could be through finding the right workplace. So yeah, and getting help to express emotions, which is very hard for people who are on the spectrum. So that's E. M, I'll go real quick. M is for mindfulness and meditation. So what sometimes happens with autism is the blinkers and we stay, within, even though we want to be outside the box, we want to be able to think, creatively and divergently. Sometimes, we tend to stay in a safe world. So mindfulness is, using your 5 senses to look around you. Go for a walk, stop and smell the roses, get your bare feet on the grass, lay on the grass and look at the clouds and find a unicorn or whatever. So mindfulness and meditation is so good for calming down. If you'd told me 5 years ago I would be meditating and hugging trees, I would have said, nah. But now I meditate and it helps me to stay calm. It helps me to find the breath and find my peace. O is for own your shizzle. You must own your sizzle. So if you've offended someone, which we often do, maybe you need to fess up or make an apology. Owning your shizzle is a whole bunch of stuff, but it could be taking action to help you to be a better public speaker, to overcome that fear, whatever it is. And oils, O is for essential oils, which I just use for anchors and also to help people with emotions and feelings. They can be very powerful. J is for journaling. You got to get a journal. I forgot to bring my good one in here. It says, yes, you can. But just have a journal and write everything down. It's really important to get it from the brain, from the heart, through the pen, to the page. Not typing necessarily, unless that's really your thing, if that gives you that emotional connection. So journaling, it could be gratitudes, it could be whatever bad stuff happened today. And we also do the 3 J's, jealousy, judgment, and justification, and just trying to reduce those. And the last one is I, the inner child. Let the inner child speak, or speak to the inner child. It's okay, I'm going to take care of you today. All right, that guy's a really mean guy, but we're going to look after you. We're going to do the 5, or we're going to find our voice together and we're going to speak up. So, and then expressing the inner child, like the stimming, like dancing, like singing. What's that lovely expression? Sing like no one's listening, dance like no one's watching, and love like you've never been hurt. Like, try those things and step outside the comfort zone. And I is also for inner peace, inner calm, doing the inner work, and even the Iceman, the cold shower is so confronting, and then you're facing a fear, and you do it again tonight, and you do it again tomorrow, and that will help you embrace another fear. So the more we can embrace fear and actually bring it into our lives, the more we develop and grow.
I love that. And that is such an important model because these are kind of like some of the basic things that everybody should really know, but it kind of goes over their head just because maybe they're living a very busy life and they're doing this, this, and that. But when you take it back to the basics, those are the foundations that you need in order to build your character to make it the best that it can be and to help everybody in whatever aspect that they need it. So there's two more topics, and we only have about 20 minutes left. These are like the most important topics in my opinion, and you guys can agree with this too. But we really just need to talk on this. So if everybody can just keep it concise and just hit the points that they want to hit. So
I was just going to ask everybody to take like 2 minutes on masking, because that is something that I think is so huge that we all do every day. And I want to start with Lyric because she has written so much and said so much that I just love on masking.
Yeah, so the two topics, just to give you a little heads up, right now we're going to do masking, and once everybody's finished, I need you guys to speak to the parents of children with autism, maybe some helpful tips that they can do and strategies and techniques, and to really accept them for who they are. So Lyric started off with the masking, and then we're going to go to everybody, and then we're going to move on to parenting, and that's just going to be the little right now.
Perfect. So let me first set the tone about autistic masking, because if you're new to some of this, it might be something you may have not heard or understand exactly. That autistic people in life, often we learn either consciously or subconsciously, we don't always even realize we're doing this, to hide or mask our autistic traits, anything that makes us stand out or makes us look different. Because remember, we had bullying, and a lot of us were picked on by our peers, and some of us were picked on and we didn't even realize we were being picked on. It's subtle picking on, like, oh, what was that you just did that was kind of weird, or why are you jumping up and down, or why don't you ever sit still. Like, maybe people weren't trying to be picking on us, but they're these little comments that they send this message and you receive the message that I apparently am doing something strange, and you want to be invisible. You don't want to stand out. And so you learn to camouflage, or because with neurodivergent people, our weaknesses are often different and our strengths are often different than that of the neurotypical population. And so we can be sometimes perceived as simple things, but we also can be really good at things that neurotypical people think are impossible or difficult to do. So it's like this double-edged sword where I tend to be either really good at something or really terrible at something, and there is no in between. It's very one or the other. I'm all or nothing. And so when we're masking, it's often because our weaknesses, like, we think they are shameful because it's something that's like, oh, why can't you do that? This is so easy for you. Like when I was a kid, for the life of me, I couldn't tie my stinking shoes, and it took me longer to learn to ride a bicycle. And as an adult, talking about earlier, like writing and art and those other things are more natural to me than communicating like this, spoken here. Like all of these things, these differences, but the things I'm good at, I'm really good at. And so I thought that all of those parts of me that were different, even before I knew I was autistic, I hid them and I masked them. And I didn't even know I was doing it because I had received this message that who I was a broken, lesser version of a neurotypical, and everything that made me different was shameful. And so I'm also, I go by non-binary, they, them pronouns. I'm a member of the queer community. And so I know, as being a queer person and someone who's come out of the closet before in multiple circumstances, that living in closets and being able to not live authentically is soul crushing. People need to be loved and accepted as they are, for the human being, the whole person, weaknesses, strengths, all of that. And it's very cruel to hold things against people that they can't help and not empower them to be the best version of themselves they can be. And there's this pressure from society as a whole for autistic people to blend in and not make waves and be less of an inconvenience on the neurotypical people around them. So masking, it's harmful, and it can cause us to have bad mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and suicide is one of the top killers of autistic people. Suicide and epilepsy are top killers of autistic people. So with the fact that masking is so dangerous to autistic people's mental health, it is incredibly important that we talk about this and help empower autistic people to feel proud in their autistic identity and let autistic people, express themselves authentically.
Well, I just want to chime in and say that I love that my podcast co-host pointed to their microphone and said, "This isn't my strength."
It's true, though. I've had to teach myself this because typing is my first language, and art and music are my first language. But I'm also a trained, musician and trained in theater, so I can write a script and rehearse it, and that's art. Dun, dun.
Yeah, amazing.
All right.
Now we want to go to Christopher, and then Tony, and then Auntie Shaza about the topic of masking, just because we have only a few minutes to share and we have so much to cover. So, Christopher, you're up next.
Well, kind of thinking back on all the times I tried to go through the interview process, and the way I'm just going to quickly say this, the way they do the interviews, it just seems more like it's catering more to neurotypicals than people on the autistic spectrum. And the only reason I got an internship with a photography studio was because, he decided it was someone I knew in college, and two, it was because he decided to do something different, actually testing my skills instead of testing how I speak. And I'll just leave it with this. Of all the places that, I've tried to get hired through the typical interview process and where I'm working now, the place I'm working now, I decided to leave out saying that I'm on the autistic spectrum, while all the others I did. I'll leave that for you to decide on whether maybe some sort of partial discrimination or not. But yeah, especially with the one place which did happen to be corporate, where it was one of my first times. So of course I was shaking like a leaf and nervous, and of course told him that, and he was trying to calm me down and whatnot. But still to this day, I don't know if he's saying that just to, be nice, or if he just thought of me as some sort of ticking time bomb waiting to explode. So, like with the autistic tantrum, that, stereotypes.
Christopher, that's a great example of masking when, and a question we have on the spectrum always is, do I disclose or don't I? Because sometimes it's not safe to, come out of the closet. So that's a beautiful example, I think, of a way in which we would mask, is to just not identify who we are. Some other ways that we might mask would be to stop our stimming and just hold that inside. If we decided to, a lot of us are into wearing costumes or flamboyant or beautiful clothing. If I choose not to wear my collection of hand-beaded Indian outfits in public, it's because I know I'm going to have to answer a bunch of questions about that. That's masking. If I look at you in the eyes, that's exhausting for me and I can't concentrate. If I choose to do that, that is going to be me pretending to be somebody I'm not. And I'm going to have to go home and have a 3-hour nap if I make eye contact. So those are some examples of how masking occurs. And it's a very exhausting process. It's, autistic people have been trained oftentimes, because of the shame lyric mentioned, to mask 24/7. It's like people of color who had to pass in previous times, and maybe sometimes now they still, do that, where it's you're really acting a part or being somebody you're not all the time. There's no escape from that, even sometimes from family and friends, if you're not accepted, by the people who are supposed to love you.
Shaza.
Yeah, I've spent my whole life masking until recently. And mostly masking anxiety, for being different, for thinking differently, for not agreeing with people, but not being assertive enough or confident enough to speak up. So I have now found my voice, and I'm helping kids. Yes, thank you, Lyric. I'm helping kids to find their voice, and even if that's a soft voice, maybe your voice is through your art or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And thank you guys all for really explaining what that was. Because there was two things when I first started the special, or organizing everything. Jr. can probably confirm this. I didn't know what neurodivergent meant, and I didn't know what masking is. So thank you guys for just really explaining what that means, just for somebody that might not know what it meant. Now we only have, I'm telling you, we only have 10 minutes. So I want to go around the panel, and Jr. You can chime in on this as well. But I want everybody to give one piece of advice or maybe one piece of information to a parent that, maybe they just had a child that just got diagnosed. Give them one piece of information that they can take to help them with their parenting skills. And after that, 1 minute, please guys, just try to keep it as short as possible. I want you to give one connector and one way that people watching this right now can be able to reach you.
I'll start because I've got a really great one. Your kids are not broken. Your kids are not poorly formed neurotypicals. Your kids are perfectly formed autistic individuals. And they're like Macs in a PC world. They have a slightly different operating system, but at the end of the day, they get everything done, just like neurotypical people do. And the way to get a hold of me is right at the bottom. Lyric.
Yes, I will say that my number one piece of advice to parents is say, I don't look anything like I did when I was a young person, and there is no way of knowing what an autistic young person is going to look like as an adult. And the most important thing you can do now is to help your young person build a sense of autonomy and self-worth and pride. An autism diagnosis is not a scary thing. It is an answer. And so when you are facing a new diagnosis, whether you are the parent or the person themselves who has just received this diagnosis, you're at this crossroads where you're at a fork in the road. You can go in one of two directions, towards the dark side or the light side. And the dark side is gloom and doom. This is a horrible thing. This is like worse than death that I have this autistic person in my life. And that is horrible because that is going to put shame on that person. And you need them to have pride in themselves. And then the light side is empowering the person to be the best version of themselves they can be, understanding what that means for the individual and meeting them where they are. And don't let anyone else push you around, scare you into doing anything you're not comfortable with as a parent. Don't let doctors push you around, therapists push you around. Love your child, empower your child, and there's nothing, like JR said, there is nothing wrong with your child. And I'm easy to find. Neurodivergentrebel.com. If you Google Neurodivergent Rebel, I'm on all social media. Neurodivergentconsulting.org if you are an organization who would like to.
You cut out, so I'll just say, if you're an organization that would like to pay her.
No, to make your workplace. Well, I guess that too, but more importantly than that, well, yeah, to make you, if you want to make your workplace better,
Yes.
neurodivergentconsulting.org.
Okay, Shasta.
Yeah, look, yesterday I saw a girl walking down the street. We were driving, and she had her headphones on, and she was dressed unusual, really bright colors. She was kind of like a skater girl, and she was dancing and singing. And my partner's son has Asperger's, so both of us just embraced that vision, like, isn't that great that she is so comfortable and so happy doing that? And that's what I ask of parents, of teachers, to embrace that difference, to embrace, the joy that comes with creativity. So absolutely. And people can find me at Auntie Shazza Teen Whisperer. I did put another link up for my larger group, which is called The Kids. I have to read it. the kids, teen, and families whisperers support during challenging times. But I'm not sure if the link worked, but I'll try again later. But
Okay.
just if you go to Sharon Chamello, Camello, CHEMELLO, that's my personal, and then you can find me. Just DM me.
Amazing. Christopher, you're up next.
I would say my advice is have patience and seek first to understand. Because just like, just as the parent is struggling to understand what their child is going through, the child is just as much trying to understand what they're going through on top of that. Because a lot of the examples they have on television and whatnot is typically neurotypical, so they're always going to be wondering why exactly they're different. So that one of the best things, my late mother, which she would be actually, I believe, 73 today if she was still alive, is, she decided to do her research. She looked up not just on autism, but information on autism from people actually on the autistic spectrum, since they would know more than anyone else what it's like being on the spectrum. So she looked up books by Temple Grandin, very known autism advocate and on that spectrum herself, and started working with the special ed teachers just to, educating them from what she learned and going back and forth with information, just trying to be able to provide the best that they could, especially with a system with a bunch of old fuddy-duddies that are still locked in the old ways, I guess you could say. So just to seek first to understand the best you can and just have a lot of patience with them.
And where can people reach you at, Christopher?
Oh, right. And ChristopherCasson.com. So that's basically more like a centralized hub. So you'll be able to learn more about my podcast, which one of my most recent episodes was basically on autism and sleep, or the lack thereof that we tend to get. And this one person that is trying to solve that with having two autistic kids himself, of having these beds that are almost like help with the sensory issues and whatnot, so they could get a better sound sleep from what he's learned, and further developing them. And on top of that, learning more of my photography, my art, etc.
Amazing. And last but certainly not least, we have Tony. Tony, take the floor.
Yeah. Make sure your child has access to autistic mentors. That's the person who can say, look, yeah, it's hard. I know, I've been there. Here's what I did. You're going to make it. You're going to be okay. That person is going to be the closest ally that your autistic child can have. And also recognize that an autistic person is going to come into their development in their own time. Just because all the other kids are doing something at a certain time doesn't mean your child is damaged or faulty because they're not doing it when the other kids are. They will develop and mature when they're ready. And oftentimes we're late bloomers. We're the swans that come to the lake a long time after all the other ducklings have, not that there's anything wrong with ducks, but, we develop later. We mature later. And you can reach me at tonyboucher.net.
Yeah, Dan, can I say one last thing real quick?
One last thing.
Something that gets so overlooked, and I think, and I want to see if everybody agrees. Parents do not schedule me time for themselves, because if you are frazzled and if you are overworked and you are stressed, you are not going to do the proper job of taking care of your kids.
Well, your child knows it too. These guys are acutely sensitive. Autistic people, we sense things, we feel things. We are so deeply connected with that energy. We will know it if you're upset. We will know if you're worried. We'll know if you're exhausted.
Yeah, thank you guys. I wanted to take the time for this last minute just to seriously say, Christopher, Tony, Auntie Shaza, Lyric, and my co-host JR, just for being here for this hour and a half time. I feel we really did change a lot of lives today. We gave a lot of golden nuggets. We get a lot of information for people to go out there. And please share this video, just because you may never know who might need this information during these trying times. Right. And thank you, everybody, for watching on the replay, live, wherever it may be, for spending this hour and a half of time just to come through and really learn something that's really not talked about on a day-to-day basis. And I just wanted to say, thank you to E360 TV for hosting this. Weekly Dose of Dano TV. We're live Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And just thank you guys so much. I've been humbled and grateful, and I've learned so much today. So everybody go about their merry ways. Go spread this peace, love, and positivity into the world. And I will see you guys this Thursday, 6 p.m. for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV. And I just wanted to thank everybody one final time. So thank you all so much for coming today. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much.